Hi guys, Ian Johnson from drivesuccess.com. Today we're going to talk about running a consignment inventory agreement, and we're going to do this from the mindset of your company being the vendor in these types of agreements. We're going to basically explain how the agreement works. It's very simple and straightforward. And then we're going to basically summarize the pros and cons of the agreement as the vendor, and we're going to help you sell this type of agreement to your customer. Okay? Now, before we get started, I just wanted to explain why companies look at consolidated inventory as a good tool. Okay? And in order to do that, you have to ask yourself, what a company has to cover in terms of its inventory costs when it comes to purchasing raw materials, finished goods, what have you. Any company, regardless of the industry or the market that it operates in, any company has to cover a cost of freight on incoming parts, raw materials, and finished goods. It doesn't matter, if the vendor has told the company, don't worry about it, I'll include delivery all the way to your door. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the company is covering a cost of freight to get those parts into their warehouse, okay? So, either it's provided as a service and it's hidden inside the vendor's price, or it's a separate line item that you have to cover on your own. Regardless of either one of those things, a company has to cover freight to get products into their warehouse, and that is a huge cost of inventory. So that's one of the main benefits of vendor consignment, okay? Is that the entire agreement is structured around reducing your customers' per unit freight costs, but also reducing your own per unit freight costs. If you're providing it as a service to your customer, you're going to lower your freight costs, but you're going to lower your customers as well. And the second benefit is pricing. Higher volume, lower pricing. So we're going to go through how the agreement works. It's very straightforward. We're going to basically go over this example of an agreement over 6 months. I've written consignment, usage, and vendor. And in consignment, what happens is you ship a large volume of product to your customer's location, but your customer doesn't own that volume, okay? Your customer only pays for what they use in a given week, a month, or a quarter, okay? And you'll have to determine, when you invoice your customer and how you reconcile inventory. So in this case, in the first month, you ship 1,000 units. Your customer doesn't use any of the 1,000 units. That means you still own them. And this is an important point here. The items that are on consignment are essentially, that remain on consignment, are essentially owned by you as the vendor, okay? So in the first month, your customer didn't use any. That means you still own the total amount of inventory of 1,000 units. In the second month, they used 100, so there's 900 left on consignment, and there's 900 left in terms of your ownership. Now, I've used consignment and vendor in order to draw that distinction between what the customer is using and what you own, okay? So in the third month, the customer uses 100, there's 800 left on consignment, you own the 800. In the fourth month, they use 250, there's 550 units left on consignment, you as the vendor still own 550 units. And in the fifth month, they use 300, there's 250 left, and there's 250 left that are still your liability. And in the last month, your customer draws out the remaining 250 units, there's nothing left on consignment, and there's nothing left that you own. So that's how a consignment inventory agreement works. You ship a large volume of product to your customer's location. They draw upon that inventory in their warehouse. They get invoiced for the inventory that they use in a given month, and whatever remains is your liability. You still own it. So that's essentially how a consignment inventory agreement works. It's a good agreement for your customer because it helps to lower their costs, their pricing, their per unit freight costs. So we're going to go over basically some of the benefits, the pros and cons for you as the vendor, okay? So let's talk about the pros for being the vendor in these types of agreements, okay? Very simply, right off the bat, you're going to secure long-term business, okay? So you're securing long-term business by sending your customer a large volume of product. Once they receive the shipment, they're not going to go out and buy from somebody else. So you're going to secure long-term business. You're going to lower your freight costs, okay? Lower freight. Okay? Now, I'm going to put a little star here. You're lowering freight if you're providing it as a service to your customer. Okay? So if you're saying to your customer, we're going to include, delivery as a service, you're going to lower your freight costs. If your customer is covering freight, probably not the case in this type of agreement, then you're not lowering it. But for the most part, you're going to lower your freight costs because 9 times out of 10, when you provide consignment, you're providing delivery all the way to your customer's door. So you're going to secure long-term business, you're going to lower your freight costs, and you're going to position yourselves as incumbent supplier. Okay? So you're going to secure your position as a vendor of choice. All right? So those are the benefits. The cons. Now there are some drawbacks for the vendor. And these drawbacks are very important. First of all, you still have holding costs. Okay? Just because the inventory is at your customer's facility, it doesn't mean that they own it. You still own it. Okay? So you still have holding costs. You still have to cover costs of financing your inventory, okay, which is a cost of capital. You still have to concern yourself with obsolescence. And in the case of obsolescence, what happens when you get down to the 4th or 5th month and there's 300 there's 550 and 250 units left over on the agreement, and your customer says they no longer want it? What do you do? I mean, that's parts that you may not be able to sell to other customers. So you still have a concern about obsolescence. You still have a concern about damage. Okay? You may have inspected all of these parts before you ship them to your customer, but what happens when they get to your customer's facility and all of a sudden they open up a box one day and claim there's damage? So there's damage is an issue. Okay? Theft may be an issue. All right? So your holding costs of inventory still apply. You still have to finance inventory. There's still a cost of capital when it comes to this inventory for whatever amount that remains on consignment. Okay? So holding costs are a concern. And these basic drawbacks all relate to your 3% inventory carrying costs, which basically pertain to the cost of capital, obsolescence, damage, theft, poor handling, and all these other things. And these are the type of issues you have to be aware of when you enter into this type of agreement, because you could be going fantastic all the way into the 4th or 5th month, and you could have an issue with this. Finally, the last drawback is reconciling inventory. Okay? So you're basically having to trust your customer. You have to trust your customer saying, okay, I used 100. You're going to have to trust them because they may have used 150. So reconciling inventory, when your inventory is at another location, your customer's location, you still own it's not easy. Okay? So those are the pros and the cons, okay, from the vendor perspective. From the customer's perspective, customer benefits, I'm running out of space here, but I'll do my best. Customer benefits are the following, okay? Lower price. They're going to reduce their price because they're going to buy a higher volume, okay? They're going to lower freight. Okay? They're going to lower their per unit freight costs on incoming parts, which is a huge cost of inventory. They're going to reduce lead time and turn time on supplier parts. Reduce lead time. And finally, they're just going to be able to better manage their inventory. They're going to have the parts in their warehouse. They'll be able to use them when they need them. They're going to lower their inventory holding costs because they're not going to have to rush parts in at the last second. So that's basically the entire process to running a consignment inventory agreement. Okay? You ship a large volume of product to your customer's location. You still own what has not been used by your customer. And every single month, as they draw upon inventory, you invoice them for their usage for that month, and you still own what's left. So, you are going to secure long-term business. You are going to reduce your freight costs if you're providing that as a service to your customer. You'll position yourself as the incumbent supplier, but you still have holding costs. You still have a cost of capital. You still have to concern yourself with obsolescence and damage. And the difficulty in reconciling inventory, if you're running this by Excel spreadsheets, if you don't have any way of basically managing this inventory count at your customer's facility in real time, it's going to be a problem. But, in terms of your customer benefits, lower price, lower freight, and they're going to reduce their lead time. So that's it. Consignment inventory agreements, Ian Johnson, driversuccess.com. Bye-bye.